Okay. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is our next panel at the New Hampshire Summit, and really grateful and excited, tremendously so on both counts, with our colleagues who have kindly joined us on the panel regarding joint investments in systemic inclusion, the Manchester Partnership. And you all are kindred spirits in really a very exciting trailblazing effort. And if you'd kindly introduce yourselves, and perhaps Brian, if you could get us started.
Yeah, sure. Honored to be here. My name is Brian Bicknell, and I serve as the president of Manchester Community College. And want me to pass it over to Barry, who's next on my Brady Bunch setup?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Barry.brensinger. I'm a principal of the Valley-Brensinger Architects and the coordinator of Manchester Proud.
And Jim?
Good morning, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for this opportunity this morning. I'm Jim Robbins with Bangor Savings Bank. I'm our Community Development and CRA Officer, and happy to be here this morning.
Thank you, Jim. Ken?
I am Ken Sheldon. Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Bob. I am the state president for Bank of America, and appreciate being on with all of you.
Thank you. And Mary?
Well, hello there. It's good to be here. I'm Mary Ford, and I am the Dean of the School of Education at Southern New Hampshire University. We're very pleased to be participating in this event.
Well, and you all are amazing, amazing colleagues to work with and co-conspire with. And with that, Barry, do you want to lead us off by giving a broad brushstroke overview of the mischief we're up to together?
Did you want to introduce LaTanya?
Oh, well, I think we're just gonna focus on the panelists because we have a number of others who aren't on the panel.
Okay, thank you.
Happy to do that, Bob. Good morning, as I said to everyone. I'm glad you're all here. I will provide some context for this conversation, but I guess I need to begin by telling you a little bit about what Manchester Proud is, because that's the origin of a good part of this. And I suspect many of you have heard of it, but perhaps not all. And Manchester Proud is our city's first community-wide movement to improve our public schools. We started 3 years ago. We gathered 10,000 local participants in creating a plan for the future of the schools. That plan is focused on excellence and equity for all students, and it's driven by two core beliefs. The first is that our public schools are an essential community asset, and the second is that in the 21st century, we can't leave schooling to teachers and educational leaders alone. We need community engagement and ownership of our public schools. So it was on February 20th that our plan for the future of the schools was approved, and within 3 weeks, we were facing COVID-19 as a country and as a world. And as you can imagine, that had considerable impacts. One of which, however, and I hate to characterize it as a silver lining, but I think in the longer spectrum of this work, it will have been an important turn of events, that COVID heightened our focus on the needs of our most needful students, on our most disenfranchised students. And it was through that sense of urgency to provide, for example, technology and connectivity for our remote learners that we first connected with Bob and the National Center for Digital Equity. And we began conversations about how we could, in the short term, address those needs of our students. And it was through Bob that I learned that he had already developed a partnership with Mary Ford, the dean at Southern Hampshire University. And Sanu does so much incredible work in our community and elsewhere, and they were among the founders of Manchester Proud, so there was a natural connection there. And Bob put on the table this idea of, suppose we bring banking partners together to explore how CRA funds might be more strategically applied and focused in this case on the needs of Manchester School District students. That also made a lot of sense to us because among Manchester Proud supporters were nearly all of the Manchester community serving banks. And so we had a natural connection with them. They were among our core funders. And ultimately, we reached out to our friend Brian Bicknell, the president at MCC, another extraordinary community resource. And Bob brought added credibility to the group through national endorsements of this work, through relationships he has built over time, and folks across the country with related interests who supported this. And ultimately, I think one of the tipping points was when the New Hampshire Bankers Association came to the table and said, we're willing to be a co-convener of this forum, bringing banks together in their service. I think it's fair to say, as I close these opening remarks, that the foundation of this was a shared determination by everyone involved to, as I said a moment ago, get some technology to our kids that need it most in this remote learning environment. It's an essential tool for them. And to create, on a longer term basis, some pathways for our LMI students out of intergenerational poverty. And we all share that commitment. This work is perfectly aligned with Manchester Proud because our current activities are working on building school to community partnerships. And this work has the potential to be a model of how do you do that. That can be inspirational to other associations and businesses throughout our community. And as I said, we are committed to promoting excellence and equity, and I stress that word, equity, for all learners in the district. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Bob.
Thank you, Barry, very much. So one of the things that Barry and I did very early on, after we discovered that there is indeed a wonderful resonance between the Manchester Proud's really lovely, very systematic approach to partnerships in the community, to mobilize community partners to support learning opportunities for kids in the Manchester school system. One of the things that we did was we reached out with Will Arvelo and some others to the community college system of New Hampshire, Brian and his colleagues at the leadership level in community colleges statewide. And we discussed with them as well as with foundation leaders in New Hampshire. For example, Telmyra Hill and Pon Nittichan, and Barry, of course, having yourself been on the board of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, really looking at how can foundation leaders and educational system leaders make investments along with their banking partners for systemic inclusion to really address poverty, particularly for kids, low and moderate income kids or LMI kids in the Manchester school system and their families, and how do we help them move out of intergenerational poverty. And one of the things that we did is, as Barry, you kindly shared, is we reached out to the New Hampshire Bankers Association, to Christy Merrill and her colleagues there, and they were wonderfully receptive and supportive of this notion of partnering with the banks in Manchester to really look at how can we design win-win-win investments that tap not only CRA, but philanthropic and other kinds of investment expertise in the banking world, along with philanthropic partners and educational system leaders to work together in a long-term way to really grow pathways out of intergenerational poverty for kids. And so one of the things we wanted to do is really look at this as a framework for this initial conversation. Barry and I explored reaching out to bank presidents with operations in Manchester, and for example, Ken and Jim, whom you'll hear from shortly, sharing their insights as banking leaders. What we really looked at is this notion that we talked about in the opening frame of the opening keynote for today, which is financial inclusion, economic educational and digital, and really saying that we all recognize that one-legged stools are not helping kids and their families get out of intergenerational poverty. It's too complicated, and the challenges, even in non-COVID times, is hard enough. And so what we agreed is we really need to make systematic efforts. So one of the things that Barry and I proposed with our banking colleagues was to take a long view to this, but then approach it in a very incremental way over time, and look at what it might be some low-hanging fruit kinds of ways in which we can work together to have immediate impacts and build a track record of collaborating with one another over time. And so that was the long view on that. And Brian, I'm wondering if you could share from your vantage point as president of Manchester Community College, the amazingly invaluable roles that educational system leaders bring to this conversation around systemic inclusion.
Yeah, I think with systemic inclusion, partnerships are so critical. In life, they're critical. I remember I got my master's degree in psychology, and I remember taking classes on relationships. And the number one predictor of happiness in a successful relationships with people that respect each other and have admiration for each other. And, so when we started these discussions, Mary Scott's been a leader in the field of education since at least the mid 70s. I won't go any further than that. But for a long time, and is somebody of great esteem and great respect. And then, Bob, honestly, the work that you do is inspiring, breaking into generational poverty and systemic inclusion. So you're somebody that is widely respected. Barry, with the career that he's had, could be in Naples right now and on the back nine. And instead, he's obsessing over equity. How do we provide equity to these folks in Manchester? Jim and Ken, two incredible leaders in their respective fields, and are known, on a regional and national level. So it's just, there's an incredible amount of respect. And when you have that level of respect and admiration, that's where real great partnerships happen. Leadership matters. And so that's been something that has been wonderful that's really come out of this. By the way, the research also shows marriages don't work when one person is condescending to the other. So that's my marriage therapy lesson for the day is, respect, not condensation. So these partnerships are critical. And for Manchester Community College, there's three things for most community colleges, certainly for Manchester Community College. There's three things that really motivate and drive us. And one is access to higher education. Another one is student success, I call social mobility. So it's not just access to education, but success, that students can get an education and move up and get a bachelor's degree or get a job. And the other thing is having a curriculum that matches the needs of the workforce, right? Otherwise, you come here, get an education, then you can't go anywhere. So those three things are absolutely critical. And if you look at what Barry was just talking about, for example, you can see there's an academic pathway from K through 12 to higher education, whether it's SNU with working with Mary and her folks, or at Manchester Community College or wherever. So those pathways are critical. What's been inspiring to me is to see, Jim and Kem step up and say, what about banking pathways? Let's put that on the map. And so now we're developing an academic pathway for a banking career. Okay. And so now that's inspiring to folks. Wait a second. It's a great opportunity. And it's a great opportunity that's been there. But if you don't know when an opportunity exists, you can't take advantage of it. So Ken and Jim are stepping up and saying, no, this is an opportunity. And it's also not an opportunity where there's a ceiling, right? You can start on this path and continue to move up, and you're going to make a livable wage. And when I say a livable wage, I don't mean a wage that allows you to live. I mean to fully live. And so that's a pathway, and this is the starting point. Also, Bob, I think we should part out. We're talking about low hanging fruit with laptops, connectivity, some academic pathways, but this is a beginning. And Barry's right. We're going to get this right. We're going to do some great things, and then we expand, and that's when you get the real equity benefits. But these things, these partnerships, we infuse each other. So it's not just supporting each other, right? It's not just that SNU is supporting Manchester Proud. It's in it. It's part of Manchester Proud. You know, the banking industry is in it. MCC is in it. And through that, we're infusing each other. Each is stronger because of it. So that's my marriage advice and partnerships. But I think we have a chance to do something really special here. And then I hope we take our show on the road, because people all over the place can benefit from this.
Well, this is a great start, Brian. Jim, can you share from your perspective? So when both Barry and Brian mentioned about the low-hanging fruit approach, you know, to starting incrementally in our collaboration together, can you share a little bit about that and you won't say this about yourself, so it's incumbent upon a friend to do this for you, which is the extraordinary example that you and your colleagues at Bangor Savings have set in really getting the ball rolling around Operation Lemonade as a start. Can you share about that?
Thanks, Bob. I surely can. So, you know, I think a good starting place in this conversation is that when Bob McLaughlin first introduced the concept of, you know, a joint investment partnership in Manchester, I really thought that was an intriguing idea. It was out of the box thinking. It was different than, you know, our daily interactions in the marketplace. I mean, after all, as bankers, we're competitors. Our interactions in the marketplace were around business plans that, for the most part, involved increasing market share for our respective institutions. So the idea of coming together in a joint partnership, we saw that as a unique opportunity in time that was very different than our typical orientation. And as it relates to our partners in our educational institutions, our interaction with those folks are typically philanthropic and on a limited scale. So again, to be at the table with a group of potential partners was really intriguing to us. So I guess the first question that we asked, is we started to ask ourselves is why not? Why not do this? Let's go there and see what happens. So how do multiple stakeholders reach consensus on identifying potential initiatives with achievable outcomes? Well, of course, you ask a banker. No, in all seriousness, in the first couple of meetings, we started to look at ideas and initiatives that were already out there. They were undeveloped, but they were already out on the street. And so how do you turn those ideas or those potential initiatives into something that you can get your arms around? Well, we really kind of approached this, using a typical, SMART goal process. Are what we are looking at specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it relevant? Is it time-based? And so the bottom line is that the result was that we came up with a couple of initiatives that fit that criteria for the group. It was pretty exciting to see that all come together in a couple of meetings between a group of bankers and a group of educators working together in a room. And the result was Project Lemonade. 1,000 laptops for LMI learners and the possibility to create career pathways into banking or into education. Those two concepts were really strong. So I just want to pause there for a minute and I want to reflect a little bit on the potential impact. We saw in those two initiatives the possibility of equitable learning outcomes resulting from digital access. We saw an opportunity to disrupt the cycle of poverty. And we saw longer term, the opportunity of creating an urban workforce pipeline of diverse and informed workers who can identify the needs and challenges of their own neighborhoods and the communities that they live and work in. That's a win-win. That's a win for the community, and it's a win for employers. So we got pretty excited about this. We got excited, and I think that from our perspective at Bangor Savings Bank, we wanted to take this opportunity in time and light the fuse. So we made a $25,000 commitment to get the ball rolling, knowing and feeling confident that our partners at the table would respond in kind and would follow. And we still believe that this is going to move probably more quickly than any of us had realized in the beginning when we first started having these conversations together. So some of the takeaways for me in this early work is that, number one, we really have an opportunity to create commonality. And that commonality is going to lead to more focused and more impactful community development, something that we couldn't do as individuals or on our own. I think the second takeaway for me is that, and an observation, that CRA goals and regulatory requirements are different from focusing on creating community vision and collaboration. Very different outcomes. I think the third thing for me was understanding the power of leverage. $250,000, which is the price tag on Project Lemonade, is a pretty steep climb for any single stakeholder or entity. But together, as an investment partnership, as a group, that's not that heavy a lift. And I think the fourth takeaway for me was the momentum that a group of stakeholders develop when creating this common language and a broader view of the communities we serve. So I'll pause there, and I'm happy to put that out there for us.
Jim, thank you so much. It's a privilege and a joy to pivot to Kim and sharing about the other of the two initial low-hanging fruit objectives that we all took on. Can you kindly share about that?
Sure. Jim, great comments. And, as I look at this initiative, and we were early adopters in Barry and Arthur when they stepped up, but so happy that we did, because when you look at a community like Manchester, Barry and Arthur and others were successful in drawing the whole community together. And I don't know if there's any other place in New Hampshire that this could have happened. I don't even know about New England. The way that the nonprofits got on board, the school board, the alderman, the mayor, really gives this power. In what makes a community great, what makes this country great, is economic opportunity. And there are clearly some people that are being left behind. And our bank has shined a light on that recently, but more importantly, Barry and Arthur and others started early in this to shine a light on it and say, our community is only as good as, it can be only as successful as those people that are broadly trying to make this community work. And what is great about this project, not only these low-hanging fruit that we're talking about today, but more broadly, the systemic inclusion and the ability to create opportunity, is that you take to widen that scope of those people that have economic opportunity. We've seen in our own organization that when we hire people that reflect the communities that they live in, the more successful that branch is or that operation is. And I think we're leaving a lot on the table, or out there, that is not producing to the extent that it could. There's talent that we're not taking advantage of. there's this untapped ability because of just the way our society has operated, where you've got people that are very bright, but have not had the educational opportunity, and that educational opportunity has not led to the career opportunity. And so they don't think that there is hope for them, that they don't feel like there is opportunity. And I think that's what this does on a perfect microcosm for the broader society. So if we can prove that it can work here through generous donations and the efforts and the focus of this group, then I think this can carry to Nashua, Concord, and to hopefully other states. So those low-hanging fruit in terms of the computer Operation Lemonade, we're going to step up a little bit on that, not quite as far as Bangor Savings. I'm trying to get additional allocation for that, but also on these pathways, career pathways. I've talked for years with Tim and Will and the predecessor Ross Cattell at the community college system about creating those pathways. Again, I think we need to, in our own business, reflect the communities that we serve. I think that there have been shortcomings in the past. The community college system is absolutely perfect place to foster that. Their Running Start program, which we have supported for years, allows that pathway to students, to give them that hope, to give them that direction, to give them the skills needed, and then open doors in terms of internships. And so that's the combination of things. Get them the education, the K through 12, expose them to the careers available in banking. You talked about, an affordable living. We're starting folks at $20 an hour now. That's a starting point, right? That's, where we need to get to for a lot of other employers, but I think that is livable, and then hopefully they grow from there. But these careers are sometimes felt to not be available to certain segments of our population. We need to open the doors, and I think this organization, the digital equity, combined with Manchester Proud, combined with the community college system, combined with SNU, is a perfect pathway. And I think it doesn't have to be limited to banking. It could be credit analytics, can be any of the things that the community college system is involved in. And I think this has the potential to really broaden wide. So that's it for my opening comments, but happy to be engaged in questions at the end.
That's tremendously helpful, Ken. And this is a perfect segue, Mary, to the exciting work that you've been undertaking with Project Aspire, which is in a very similar vein, Ken, to what you've been sharing in terms of inclusive pathways into banking or into data analytics and so on. One of the things that Mary has been exploring at Southern New Hampshire University with Brian and colleagues at Manchester Community College and the school system is pathways into teaching. And Mary, I'm wondering if you could share about Project Aspire and perhaps also about the empirical knowledge base about intergenerational benefits of this, because I think that this applies to banking as well.
Okay, I'd be glad to. Let me first of all kind of share with you how Project Aspire came about. It is an inclusive pathway. When John Goldhart, the superintendent of schools in the Manchester school system, I think it was his third day on the job, I met with him to ask him what SNHU could do to support him. And he said, really, what we really need now is we need to create an affordable pathway for our current paras to become certified teachers. A significant percentage of our paras come from underserved populations, and our K-12 profile of our students reflects minority populations, and yet our teaching force does not. But our problem is that they come in, they make $13,000 a year, and then they get $800 a month toward their insurance, and they have retirement. And so they can't leave their jobs because their families are dependent upon that health insurance. So they are stuck in these low income jobs. So with that, we took that information, we went back and we were kind of figuring out what we could do, and what SNHU is providing to the city of Manchester, and we hope to expand it across, is a 4-year teacher residency program where paras can keep their jobs, except they're not working as paras, they're working as clinical interns. They are paid $1,000 a month. The Manchester school system will pay $4,500 a year toward their tuition. SNHU, like Bangor Savings, has ponied up, shall we say. They can complete their entire baccalaureate degree with dual certification. We have lowered the cost significantly, and when you add the $4,500 a year that the Manchester School District is paying, it comes to $9,200 for their total baccalaureate degree. And so our goal was to help them diversify their teaching workforce and to provide an affordable pathway. And what the empirical research tells us is that when a school's workforce is diverse, there is a direct positive correlation to attendance, achievement, discipline, and graduation rates. So we have even taken it a step further in that we are hoping through the Running Start program that the community college system is offering, where they can take those early education courses for their high school students, that those Running Start education or gen eds can be applied toward either the degree at the community college or toward SNHU. And again, wanting to lower the cost. It is, higher ed's gotten too expensive and is out of reach for many of these. And we cannot affect the intergenerational change until we can lower the costs, lower the barriers, and make it accessible. So that is our goal. We currently have 10 students in our first pilot. They are in the Manchester schools. 60% of them come from underserved populations. So we are hoping to make a difference. We are going to be increasing this every term. And we look forward to working with the Manchester Community College, the community college system of New Hampshire, as well as the school district. And it is to help diversify the teaching workforce and to address the benefit cliff, which is we lost several of our people of color because they could not give up the health benefits. They couldn't come on for the $1,000 a month and not have the health benefits. So that we were wanting to work with the Bankers Forum to help see if we can address that benefit cliff. So thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Mary. And to build on that, I'm thinking it might be very timely to share the conversation, thanks to you, that you and I had with Jason Keller at the Chicago Federal Reserve. And just a quick non-subliminal advertisement. Jason's going to be keynoting for us on Thursday morning, 9 o'clock Eastern, about federal policy around CRA and workforce development and benefits cliff. And one of the conversations that Mary and I had early on about Project Aspire and CRA was, oh, that sounds way too good to be true, that interested banks could get CRA credit for helping us with this. And then you tracked down, Mary, through colleagues, the wonderful work that Jason's been doing at a national leadership level in the CRA ecosystem around CRA policy. Do you want to share the nuggets from that?
Well, what Jason was saying in terms of, and Jason is on this call right now, just so I don't know if you know that, Bob. Maybe we can have him share, but he was saying that there is, how do I say, we can access CRA funding credits to support workforce development for underserved and underemployed individuals. And so for para-educators who make $13,000 a year, they would be considered underemployed. So we are able to access them to help them address not only the benefits cliff, also childcare, which is another barrier for many of these students. So we were thrilled. Jason was very, very helpful.
One of the things that I will make sure we have after this panel conversation is I'll make sure that we share out the link to the wonderful workforce report that Jason pointed us to, that was co-published by the Kansas City and Dallas Feds on workforce development and CRA credit, because page 8 of that, just so happens, is a wonderful highlight of ways in which interested banks can receive CRA credit for removing those benefit cliffs that you're talking about. And to segue it back, Kim, to the exciting conversation that the insights you've shared about inclusive pathways into banking, one of the conversation that Ken, you helped lead with all of us around building inclusive pathways into banking has really ignited some tremendous interest among national leaders in the CRA policy ecosystem. Chris DeShonk at the American Bankers Association, and particularly Barry Whitus at the Treasury Department, U.S. Treasury Department, and Barry is going to be keynoting on Friday about CRA credit and systemic inclusion. They're very interested in your passion about making more diverse the banking workforce. And wondering if you could share a little bit more about that. And you just alluded in passing, I think, to the potential benefit, not only, of course, to those who get employed in banking, with excellent jobs, but also the benefits that they can bring in terms of cultural capital. Make sense?
Yeah, so I think there's so much to that, Bob. Kind of the theory of we're all in this together, and we've got pathways that again, people aren't aware of. And when I think about banking, there are skills that are used in banking. Some people think of banking as tellers, but a lot around banking is really credit analysis, and it's understanding the intersection of the business world with the financial and understanding of financial performance, in using that information to make decisions. And that can be used in so many businesses. It's ready-made for banking and making credit decisions on who you want to lend to, but it's also useful in any corporation that has receivables and collections. It's used in data analytics. It's used in all kinds of businesses, and not just banking. So if we can train people to understand those and understand the opportunity with those in the various career pathways through, whether it's the community college system or Southern New Hampshire University, I think there are real benefits to society and to the community to grab those skills and make sure that we can start those pathways, right? Whether it's at the running start level or the first job or their career summer internships, whatever it might be. And that's really one of the things that we're focused on for the LMI communities. How do we make that opportunity known? And then how do we build those skills? And then how do we engage with the employers in the state or in whatever community you're talking about to give those kids a chance to say, okay, this is usually our model for internship. How do we say, well, that's, let's widen the scope. Let's get those people that don't necessarily have the private school resume to have those same opportunities and bring them into the workforce. And then I think we'll find, frankly, that it's going to create all kinds of benefits for the community. In the banking industry, we've had different runs at it. I don't think we've been as successful as we could be or should be. And that's where I think this Manchester Proud and the fact that it's brought all of the different elements to it, and not just banking and not just CRA and not just, tellers. It's bringing the power of that whole community through Manchester Proud to deliver it for those people And I think, frankly, that's where the traction's going to be had, and that's where we're going to make real impact.
To build on that, Ken, I wondered, Barry, if you could share one of the things that personally really inspires me. I mean, so many things inspire me about what each of you is doing to contribute to amazing impacts for low-income kids and their families. One of the things that I'm really excited about, having been a teacher and a principal, is the ability, with Barry's help and the school system's help, to take the message of hope that Ken and Jim and Mary and Brian, all of you are creating these pathways, these inclusive pathways, but making sure that kids who grow up in poverty know these pathways are there. And Barry, wondering if you could share all the capacity that you and your colleagues bring because of all the tilling of the soil that you've done around partnership in Manchester.
Sure, Bob, happy to do that. As you and Ken have implied, over the past 3 years, we've been able to bring together a remarkable number of resources in the community. I mentioned the number of 10,000 participants in our planning process. That was a level of community engagement that was unimaginable 3 years ago when we started this work. To have the financial support of more than 100 local businesses at significant levels has been similarly remarkable. Among our current work is, because we've learned of this power of community engagement and our fundamental belief, as I said in my opening remarks, that if we're going to have schools that meet our aspirational goals, they have to be owned. They have to be a community-wide enterprise and not just based on the work of the schools themselves. So with that in mind, we have begun to develop what I call a robust network of school-to-community partnerships. We are in the process of mapping all of the community resources throughout the city of Manchester that currently support our schools. What are they? Who's doing them? How do they work? How are they interrelated? Where are their gaps? In order that we can build upon that and create the infrastructure needed to drive greater and deeper relationships and more strategic relationships going forward. Again, that belief that communities need to be engaged in the schools. And as I said, again, a moment ago, part of why I'm excited about this initiative is I think it has the potential to serve as a wonderful model of how we do this as a community. We will be formally launching our School to Community Partnership Network toward the end of the first quarter of next year. And to be able to come to the community and say, here's the network, here's how it's going to work, here's the infrastructure for it, and by the way, here's an example of how it can be successful, I think is such a powerful thing.
Bob, I just want to add one thing to what Ken said earlier. It's a really important point. In terms of these academic pathways, I think the metaphor of a pathway is like you have a path like this, but they're actually big pathways, not narrow pathways. And so, like when Ken talked about the skill sets that he's looking for, I talked to the leaders at Eversource, and they're looking for a workforce that has very similar skills. So when you get in onto these pathways, it actually provides more opportunity than just this kind of narrow direction. So and once we get momentum and we get more people on these pathways, then time becomes your best friend once we have momentum going on this. And so, that's a big deal, and the thing that, I'm so excited about. And it's the same thing that Mary was saying earlier. And then you have an intergenerational benefit to it.
This is fabulous. I'm wondering for all of our guests who are joining the conversation with us, if there's a message you each might have that you haven't yet had a chance to share about this partnership and and what you most want folks to know about this to help them with the economic inclusion challenges in their communities.
Do you have an order, Bob? You want us to just jump in?
Please jump in.
Happy to do that. I guess I'll start, and this actually wasn't in my mind as a talking point earlier, but it's come out of this conversation about, at a personal level, my perception of this equity issue. Brian mentioned my passion for focusing the work of Manchester Proud on equity. And certainly I do that because over the past 3 years, I've had a lot of firsthand experience seeing the thousands of extraordinary kids in this community who not only just as basic, wonderful human beings deserve the same rights and privileges that the rest of us enjoy, but they're such a remarkable asset for our community and country. It's almost criminal for us not to be helping them, not to be developing that community and national asset. And with that thought in mind, I'm thinking about Ken's comments about it's a two-way street. The banks are not only helping these kids find careers and enriched lives, but the banks and the community is being enriched as well. The more we learn about one another and how we can support each other across community, the better off we'll all be. So I add that as a footnote to the conversation that, as I said, was inspired by the comments of my fellow presenters. Two takeaways, and they're pretty broad in nature, and they apply to the specific work of this Bankers Forum, but also to what I've learned from Manchester Proud across the past 3 years. The first is to have courage, to take the time, take the initiative, take the first step to share an idea, to bring people together, to be inclusive, to be open-minded, to be willing to learn as you go, to acknowledge you don't have all the answers, and try to figure things out together as a group, as a community. And you'll find that your ideas grow in ways that were unimaginable at the outset. And that's just been, I know that's a very broad kind of Pollyannic message, but it is one of the most powerful lessons for those of us who have been involved in Manchester Proud and in working with our banker friends, is that you can't predict the power of working together as a group on a common mission. And the second is probably equally Pollyannic, but I've learned to never underestimate the goodness and generosity of colleagues and community. And there is, I think, in the current state of our country, there's a great pent-up demand, a great pent-up desire for goodness, to make positive change. I've seen that grow just in the past 3 years in our own community. And so figuring out ways to come together and unleash that resource is among the most important work we can do.
And if it's not misbehaving, I'd like to step out of a facilitator role to add, Barry, to your sentiments. One of the things that really inspires me about the conversation we've all undertaken together, it really does come back to hope. And I think that's a really crucial dimension in all this. And I think of at least two aspects of this that really bear mentioning. One is that the incremental approach we're taking, the baby steps, the low-hanging fruit, is building momentum, and it's gaining experience working together and building a track record that says we can tackle as you're saying, progressively greater and greater challenges, because the challenge of lifting LMI kids out of intergenerational poverty is incredibly heavy. It's a very heavy lift. But what's the alternative to undertaking that? but doing it incrementally. I am so inspired by our very, again, incremental, methodical approach to that. I think that's really important. The other piece, which I'm so excited about you, Barry, and your colleagues and your colleagues with the Manchester school system being in the conversation, is that this message has got to, of hope, has got to get to these kids who grow up in poverty. I think that's mission critical in everything we all do, that these kids are making rational conclusions shockingly early in their lives, that you got nothing for me. And we've got to reach these kids before they shut down and before they stop aspiring to achieve. And I believe that by working together, we can not only give ourselves hope, but give these kids hope too. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I'd like to add, in speaking, we're talking about diversifying the task force, in helping in diversifying the workforce by helping immediately this current para to become a teacher. You're helping their family, but again, you are providing a sense of hope for all the students that they will have, not only seeing them working toward their teacher certification, but also becoming a certified teacher. So it's what you're speaking to. It provides hope, and it's the intergenerational impact is significant.
You know, Bob, one thing I would add is, like, I was just thinking, Mary, what you just said. I remember, you know, growing up, you know, when I was born, my father didn't have a college degree. And so I watched him take classes and get a bachelor's degree, then take classes, get a master's degree, then take classes, get an MBA, which at that time was equivalent to a doctorate. And so my lived experience taught me was, like, you go to high school, then you get a bachelor's, then you get a master's, then you get a PhD. That's just kind of what you do. And so, Mary, what you've kind of laid out is similar to that, right? Like, you go to school and they see their parents doing the same thing. And so I know the effect it had on me. If my father didn't do that, I certainly wouldn't be on a panel with top bankers and architects and leaders in the region. Like, that just wouldn't be my story. And so laying out these role models and going through this process is going to be incredibly dramatic. And we're at the early stages of it now. So it's pretty exciting.
You know, I mentioned commonality and economies of scale earlier, and it occurs to me that, you know, that working from the vantage point of this partnership gives us a much more comprehensive view of success and what the community can look like, much more impactful than the successes we achieve on our own or within our own institutions. And that, I think that's one of my biggest takeaways, and something that I would leave this group is that, you know, we have a chance to expand our vision. And as a result of expanding our vision, I think that impact will follow.
My last takeaway, Bob, is just that you know, life and opportunity are about timing, and I think if you look at the world around us, I think our timing is exceptional. The fact that Manchester Proud started 3 years ago and did a lot of the heavy lifting here, the groundwork for setting us up for today. Now we've got more social awareness. You've got many of the banks really focused on equity and social justice, in allocating or reallocating funds for this purpose, recognizing the broad benefits that it can have for a community, and in the need to do it just for the right thing to do. And so I think we're at a point in time, and for those people that are on this call, to really think about this, to really do some soul searching, to find out what impact you want to make to a community, what are the differences that you want to make, that you can afford to make, and use this as the right timing and the right conduit to make change happen. I'm trying to do that within my organization. I've got a fair amount of navigating to do because we're a big company. But clearly at the top of the house, this is something we are focused on. And I'm going to be pushing for allocation to my market so that I can help fund this. And I think that's, that's the story for today. This is the right time. Think about it, and hopefully we can all join forces to make a difference.
Hey, Bob, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, the panel, a great conversation on behalf of the Chancellor Community College System. We super appreciate Brian's leadership. And I was reminded in listening to the conversation, I shared in the chat bar a link to a story about a Manchester Community College alum. We have the stories now, and I think the stories really speak to what everybody's trying to do. And I think sometimes those folks can really serve as people, men and women that are out in the workforce that went to Central High School or West and went to Manchester Community College, went on to SNU. That it's creating more opportunities, really. So thanks again to everybody for a great conversation.
Thank you, Tim. And Will, I see that you've got a comment you posted in the chat as well.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank all of this esteemed panel for the great conversation. And I particularly want to thank the bankers for the work you're doing or starting to do in this space, and to Barry for the great work you're doing in Manchester, and Mary, all the great work you've been doing for many, many years. I work in this economic development space, both, and as you know, I've worked in education as well. And to me, I think there's an opportunity for the bankers as you begin to build out this work and the relationships and connecting to communities, is to really begin to engage the business community and bring them along with you. And I know that in my work, we've been at that for a long time. And the pathways are never direct and never as solid as we would like them to. So, businesses are, and I said this in a prior session, businesses are in the business of doing business, and a lot of times don't have the capacity to do the kinds of things they need to be doing to build on the educational pathways and make sure that the workforce is there for the future. So that feedback loop needs to continue to be engaged and developed, because they need to be at the table. So as Bob, as we continue these conversations, maybe next year we'll have a better presence from the business community in these conversations, including to the bank community, because we can't leave them out. They're an incredibly important component of all of this. The pathway is a two-way pathway. It's up, and we need those businesses to again work with us to create those living wage jobs, which are there. I mean, there are many living wage jobs there, but the connections are not necessarily the best connections that we can have, and so I think we're losing opportunity. Even now, we're losing opportunity. So it's important to have them at the table. And I think the bankers could be really important to that conversation.
I would love to build on that, Will, because at part of our shared evil plan, as Will and I know, is that we want to connect with the sector partner initiatives that Will and his colleagues in economic development at the state have developed with employers in sectors that have living wage jobs that are going unfilled in construction, in healthcare, in tech, manufacturing. So one of the things that I'm looking forward to is after the Manchester partnership makes great strides, which I'm absolutely certain will happen around inclusive pathways into banking and teaching, that waiting in the wings are folks like Zanagi Ibrahim with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, who's saying, I would love to connect manufacturers who have jobs that are going begging with you all to help kids, to work with you all in the same systemic way. There are lots of allies that are really eager. I'm thinking the same thing, Will, and I'm really grateful for your raising that layer as something that's around the next bend. So we have reached the witching hour on this, and really want to profoundly thank you each. This is one of the greatest joys of my professional life, is to work with you each in this conversation, in this effort together. This is going to inspire a lot of communities, a lot of banking leaders, educational system, philanthropic leaders, and others. And this is being watched, as we all know, by leaders in the federal CRA compliance ecosystem. It's being watched with great interest and admiration, and really want to thank you each. Let me just say finally that this, like all the Zoom sessions for the summit, it's being recorded, and we'll be sharing the recording links with all registrants. And if you want to share that link with others, please just let me know, and we'll get this shared with them as well. Thank you each so much. It's incredibly kind of you, as ever.
Thank you all.
Hey, Michael.
All right, we'll see you soon, Bob.
Take care. See you soon.
Yeah.